No one is talking about this, and while all eyes are on Brad Treliving's next move to secure a top six forward, no one is talking about one particular player that changes a lot surrounding this Leafs team, and some new reports and interesting comments have dropped that have huge implications going forward. To break that down, as well as discuss a few other things on this episode. But folks, before we get into it all, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. About 71% of you who are watching right now aren't subscribed. You guys' support's been unbelievable. So thank you guys for that. You guys have been fantastic. There's a lot to go over today, and obviously it's an interesting part of the offseason, and obviously we know that the Leafs have made a ton of moves, but there's one player that we have yet to talk about in depth here on the channel, at least as of late, and some interesting new reports, some comments have come out from the player himself, and this is a guy that could very well be on the move here in the next few weeks, but he could also, it's not Dakota Joshua, it is Bobby McMann, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. And Dakota Joshua, with the addition of him, it makes Bobby McMann not only more expendable, but his role a little bit more confusing heading into next year. Now, he recently played in a charity game in his hometown in Wainwright and talked with the Star News. And let's start with the comments he said, because then we'll dive into the player a little bit here. He said, "We didn't get the result we wanted, but we finished first in the regular season, and I gained a lot of experience playing in my first playoff series. It was hard to go through and not come out with a win, but I think we learned a lot from it." Now, Darius, we're going to dive into some other reports and things like that. Bobby McMann's a player that we talk about Yarncroke, we talk about David Kemp. Bobby McMann is a X factor for this team in the sense of that bottom six. Is he even going to make the team? Like, probably. But regarding trade talks, he probably has the most value out of the Yarncroke, David Camps, and even Nick Robertsons of the world. And he's coming off of a pretty decent regular season into an abysmal postseason.
Yeah, he had a good regular season, right? And we're going to get into the playoffs and everything like that in a second because he didn't offer too much for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But on one side of things, I do believe that, getting your feet wet in the playoffs is a good thing, right? He got into the playoffs finally. He wasn't in the 2024 playoffs. He was dealing with an injury, didn't get an opportunity to play in those. So obviously he got an opportunity in this year's playoffs, but I feel like with the type of style a game that he plays, coming out of the first round, you have to get going after that. You have to get going in that Florida series, and he just didn't. He really didn't offer much and was not really noticeable in the playoffs. So that is a little concerning. Did he have a good regular season? Yes, absolutely. Anytime you can get almost 40 points out of a third liner, that's pretty good. Now, he did play some time on the second line. Let's not forget about that because the Leafs had a bit of a revolving door, but I feel like they've built a better team now. And you brought up Dakota Joshua. He's a guy that in the past with the Vancouver Canucks has shown that he can play physical in the playoffs. He doesn't shy away from that stuff. Not only does he not shy away from it, he's a physical player. He loves that side of the game, and he can score in the playoffs as well. So he offers that. So does it make Bobby McMann more expendable? I think nobody's really talking about this one thing in particular, and that's, is there any value in David Kampf and Calle Jarnkrok? Teams out there, they have to free up salary cap space, the Leafs, right? There's other teams out there, if they're looking at the Leafs and what they have to sell, are they interested in David Kampf? Are they even interested in Calle Jarnkrok, right? It could come down to a situation where the Leafs go, wow, we got to shed cap here, and it might have to be McMann, and we're not even shedding that much cap because McMann at one point last season was playing at a $5 million pace, and he makes just over $1 million. So that's pretty good, but again, didn't offer too much in the playoffs. So these are the things that Brad Treliving has to consider. I see a lot of people over the last couple of days saying, I don't see Bobby McMann even making the opening night lineup. I could see him making the opening night lineup, but I do wonder if there's a situation that they're coming to here where they go, maybe we move off McMann and Robertson even to free up more cap space. I don't think that's very likely. I don't think that's the route they should go. But I said it a couple of weeks ago. Don't get married to Bobby McMann at this point. I do see a path where he does end up getting traded or he just does not start the season in the lineup.
Yeah, looking at his year last year, his best year of his NHL career, and I mean, one of his best years in just his career in general, 34 points, 20 goals, 14 assists, and it doesn't seem like he actually, like, you look at those numbers, at least for me, and I did, like, looking back at it now, I didn't realize that he actually put up 34 points. If you give those numbers to a lot of teams, they would take that, and it's an interesting point you make. The real question here is, we can look here. He had, lots of games with a couple goals, things like that. You look at the lineup. There's a very real point where maybe no teams want Jarnkrok. Teams don't really want, David Kampf. So then they're forced to move off of Bobby McMann, who they probably don't want to move off of in order to obviously clear up, not necessarily a ton of salary, but at this point, we're almost talking about, a little bit of salary, but also space in the lineup. If they want to give Nick Robertson a chance, who's locked in now, there's a real chance here where Bobby McMann is no longer a Leaf next year. And you can see this here. I'm not convinced. This is from Hayes. I'm not convinced that McMann cracks the lineup on opening night, and discuss Bobby McMahon's role with the Maple Leafs and if he'll be included on the depth chart in Toronto. And this, of course, sparked a lot of conversations about, okay, if he's not going to even make the depth chart like you'd assume this player has value. However, the confusing part has been this offseason. We don't really know, or at least the value for a lot of these players seems very confusing. And there hasn't really been much action on the trade market after that flurry of moves. I still think there is going to be a move to come, but you're right. I think Bobby McMann here, he's either going to play a big role or he's going to be off of the team, because I don't know if Bobby McMann, even like if they have to tell him, okay, we're probably not going to start you opening night, we're not going to give you a ton of, role, he'd probably prefer to be traded elsewhere. He is in his contract year right now, and you could see him not necessarily demanding a trade, but I cannot see a world where him and his agent would say, okay, let's play 40 or 50 games coming off of his best season of his career and better than a lot of bottom six players, even though he was carried, if you watch the Leafs a lot, by that, second and even I think first line for a little bit there, last year.
And I think one thing that's really frustrating, at least for me watching Bobby McMann, is you brought up that screenshot there that, he scored multiple goals in multiple games last year. Consistency is an issue with this player, right? He'll go off to score a hat trick. We've seen it in the past, or, like 2 goals in a game, but then he goes dry for a little while. So you look back on it and you go, wow, this guy scored 20 goals last year, but it was very inconsistent, right? So that gets frustrating. I do think that, he was yo-yoed a lot too. Like he was playing on the third line some nights, he was playing on the second line some nights. Like that can get frustrating too. You want to get in the groove, you want to get in a flow. And, a lot of this is based off feel for some of these players. Like, Berube came out and said that about Nylander, that he needs to get going in order to have a good game. So, a lot of that has to do with that, I think, sometimes. But in a perfect world, I wonder if the Leafs want to run like a McMann, Dakota Joshua, Nicolas Waugh third line. I think that would be incredibly hard to play against. I think that they would be able to score, that they would be physical, defensively responsible as well. Like that could be a really, really good line. But again, it comes down to, can you move Yarncroke and can you move Kemp? Because you have to move off of some salary, assuming that they are still going to make a move for a top 6 player, right? If they're not, things change a little bit. You can hold on to everyone, you're cap compliant. But I don't think that's the route they're going down at this point. I think they want to go out and get a guy for their top 6. So things are going to get interesting. And again, he had a decent regular season, very inconsistent, did almost nothing in the playoffs. I mean, and it's not that he didn't put up points. He put up 3 points in 13 games, but it was the fact that he wasn't noticeable out there. You need him to be that fast skating, because he's very quick. We've all seen him. He's fast, quick. He was none of that in the playoffs. He wasn't physical. You didn't notice him at all. And then he put up 3 points, 3 assists. So that is concerning. And I know it's his first playoff run, and I mentioned that earlier in the video, but at the same time, I think it's a little concerning as you head towards, next year, and you're like, okay, this team, we're trying to build it so it can compete in the playoffs, not just compete in the playoffs, but like dominate in the playoffs and try and go on a run and win a Stanley Cup. So it's going to be interesting what they end up doing with Bobby McMann. I feel like a lot of people are talking about how, he might not end up in the opening night lineup, but not everyone's talking about the fact that he might not even be a Maple Leaf soon.
Yeah, he was terrible in the playoffs. I'll say he basically did nothing. Basically put up no points. But let us know down below. Do you see that? Do you envision that third line that you see right here, Waugh or Joshua Waugh McMann, as a big threat? I think it can be. The question is, there's no world that this team opens up opening night with Yarncroke, David Kampf, Nick Robertson, all these guys. So who's going to be the one that gets traded? That's a big question. We'll keep you up to date every step of the way.